Now that was an edit. I'm pretty proud of that. I've always been a fan of that old Universal DVD thing of the year back, when I was a kid. So that was really fun. That was really cool. That music fit really well with the Hulk. Either way, let's get to the video. Yeah, I'm in my pajamas, but I don't care. It's like a Wednesday morning. It's raining outside. Whatever. We're just gonna talk about the Hulk. Ang Lee's Hulk came out in 2003, directed by Ang Lee, starring Eric Bana, Nick Nolte, Sam Elliott, and Jennifer Connelly. This movie's really interesting. So, when I was a kid, I was like 2 years old when this came out, but my mom or dad, they got me the 2-disc DVD. I know I've got it somewhere here, but those of you who were around for that, you know what that DVD looked like. It had some really cool stuff on the back of it, the cover. When I was a kid, I was just a sucker for cover art anyways. It made me want to watch or not watch a movie, depending on how cool it looked. But that's beyond the point. So at this time, the landscape of Marvel was really different from how it is today. There was no MCU. There was none of that. At this point, you had Blade in 1998, you had X-Men in 2000, and then you had Spider-Man in 2002 with Tobey Maguire, the original Spider-Man. Everybody's familiar with Marvel selling their rights to their characters because they went bankrupt in the 90s, which means Universal actually had rights to the Hulk. And this is still the case today. We're not really sure. We haven't really got a direct answer about it. Come around in 2003, we got a Hulk movie, and it was produced in part by Universal. And it apparently didn't do too well. I wasn't there. I was like 2. I didn't go to this theaters to see it. But I hadn't seen this movie in a long time. I used to watch it all the time when I was a kid. I used to remember the mutant dogs. But that's about it. I don't really remember a ton about it other than just watching it just to see Hulk do what Hulk does. And the older I've gotten, I've started to see a lot of video essays and people talking about this movie in a completely different light, like High Top Films and some other people. And they've really shed some interesting light on this movie and how it might just be overlooked. And what I mean by that is me and my wife actually rewatched this a little while back. She has never seen this movie until we watched it. I've seen it multiple times, but this is the first time I've seen it in a long time since I've been an adult. And what's funny is my wife has watched the MCU, including The Incredible Hulk, but she's never really been a big Hulk fan until she started watching this, and she was like, wow, they're really going in depth with this guy, and they're really taking their time to show a different side of Bruce that I've never seen before. Hulk's actually interesting in this. And this time was really interesting. This movie completely floored me. It really hit me different than it did when I was a kid, obviously, but I really think this movie is overlooked, and I mean very overlooked. It just fascinates me how much I enjoyed this. Like 2022, we had The Batman. And The Batman was like a art piece for a comic book movie. It took Batman really seriously, just like Christopher Nolan did, but in a completely different way.
When that light hits the sky, it's not just a call. It's a warning.
You really got to see a human side to Bruce, and it showed a different side of him being Batman that we've never seen before. And this is exactly how I think Hulk from 2003 is to this character. Everybody's familiar with the MCU now. And whenever they had Edward Norton be the Incredible Hulk, I remember I liked that too when I was a kid, and now we've had Mark Ruffalo since the Avengers. I don't think I'm a minority here when I say that the Hulk is not what he used to be. I always love interpretations where people are scared of the Hulk. He's like a last resort measure. Even if the Avengers bring him out, they don't know if they can stop him. He ends up fighting some of them sometimes anyways.
Dr. Banner! Bruce!
I've been really disappointed in the way they've handled the Hulk the past several years, especially when Avengers wrapped up, Infinity War and Endgame. I didn't really notice this because I was getting out of high school whenever Endgame came out. We were all on the hype train. If you were there, you were there. But it wasn't until years later where I started thinking, man, I was like, they really cut the Hulk short, and Banner, the entire character. I haven't really noticed that until I went back to watch this film and have seen how they've handled the Hulk and She-Hulk and just how they're handling him now. It's a joke compared to what the Hulk really is. And that's why I want to talk about this movie, because it really shows what the Hulk is. And to start that off, I really want to talk about how they focus on the human side of the Hulk. I think it's super fascinating. This take in particular, you really get to see like a visualization of the psyche of Bruce Banner. I mean, I've always thought that was really interesting, and now, upon rewatch, it's my favorite part of the movie. With that said, it also makes his transformations into the Hulk, I mean, they just feel so much more primal. I mean, they feel really intense. We've never had a Hulk transformation quite like the ones in this movie. And even the CGI. I mean, this movie is 21, almost 22 years old as of next year. And it still looks pretty good for the most part. There's still some bits where the Hulk looks a little funky, but this was 2003. I mean, this was the same year we had Daredevil. But it still holds up pretty dang well in this movie. And that's one thing I also want to talk about is the Hulk. I think it's really interesting how they treat him like a child. And this is not the first interpretation to do this, but this movie really leans into the inner child that the Hulk is. They depict the Hulk like he's always been there. He's been a really deep, depressed part of Bruce that's been locked down, especially after his father kills his mother.
It was as if she and the knife merged. You cannot imagine the unbearable finality of it. And in that one moment, I took everything that was dear to me and transformed it into nothing more than a memory.
I think it's interesting how they incorporate Bruce's family into this. How his dad was doing experiments on himself at a military living quarters, and that's where General Ross was too. He was working under Ross. I think it's really interesting how they tie that into him passing on his genetics, and how he's almost afraid or curious of his own son because he has no clue what these genes, everything he passed on, he doesn't know what the deal is. But I think it's really cool. By the time the movie gets towards wrapping up, you really get to see the full picture of David Banner's psyche and what he was thinking whenever he was thinking about killing his own son because he thought he was an abomination and he couldn't be cured. Let's talk about Nick Nolte, because I've seen him in some other stuff, but this movie is the one that sticks out in my head the most. This last time we watched it, I'm not going to say I was like laughing, but there was a couple parts where he was just a little cheesy, which everybody's a little cheesy. I mean, this is legitimately like a comic book movie. The way it's edited with the panel changes and the transitions, I mean, this is the only movie like it, that really took this approach. And for some people it worked, and for a lot of people it probably didn't. Now I think it's really cool. It's still a little cheesy, but it's got its charm to it. And that's one thing that I think this movie is remembered for fondly of, is it's unique. I really mean it's unique. The way that it's shot, the cinematography, I mean the visuals that Ang Lee puts on screen, and the way that you really feel like the Hulk is thinking. He's alive. Even when Bruce has not been exposed to Gamma, you really get the feel that there's something deep within him that's lurking. I love whenever depictions of the Hulk, whenever they lean into this, whenever the writers understand the difference between Banner and Hulk. And this version does something that others haven't done, is the fact that Banner and Hulk are more alike in this than they ever were in any other depiction I've seen. And you know what scene I'm talking about, but the bathroom scene. You know exactly what I'm talking about, where Bruce is shaving, and he looks into the mirror, he takes the wipe, and Hulk's there.
human.
I remember as a kid that used to just creep me out. But you know, now as an adult, it's a few seconds. It's one of the best scenes in any Marvel movie there has been. I mean, I love the imagery, especially when it flips perspective from Bruce looking in to Hulk looking in on the other sides of the mirror. I mean, it's two sides of the same coin. I mean, I think it's really cool how they visually depict that. Another thing I want to talk about that this version I think gets really right is how emotionally distant and alone Bruce Banner is. Now, whenever I was growing up, I remember my dad, he let me watch the 70s show with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno.
Dr. David Banner, physician, scientist, searching for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have. Then an accidental overdose of gamma radiation alters his body chemistry. And now when David Banner grows angry or outraged, a startling metamorphosis occurs.
And that show really did a good job of leaning into the loner aspect of it. And The Incredible Hulk also did this pretty well too in 2008. You really get to understand Bruce's psyche. I mean, you visually feel like you see it, but it just paints the picture so well. And I think it's really interesting that the main villain of this movie, besides the mutant dogs, the main villain of this movie is David Banner. As the Absorbing Man. And I'll be honest, I'm not like a huge comic book reader, even though I love comic book movies. I'm just aware of comic books and some of the stuff that happens in the source material. But I don't know much about the Absorbing Man, so this version of him I think is, obviously I'm assuming it's different because it's David Banner, but I think it's really interesting, the fact that he's like a parasite. He wants things back from his son. He wants things back from Bruce. And I think it's really neat that his eventual power set reflects him as a person, as a character. I think it's really interesting whenever a comic book movie finds a way to tie their heroes and villains with their powers, and they find different ways to explore the themes of all these characters. The climax of the movie where Hulk and the Absorbing Man fight each other, it's different from any other fight I've seen. It's not really super bombastic. It's nothing really crazy. I love the flashes you get of Hulk and Absorbing Man flying through the clouds, and you get to see fragments of it. I think that's really cool. But I love how by the end of it, they're down in this lake. They're down in this lake bed, whatever. The Absorbing Man freezes the lake. David does. And you get to peek into Bruce's psyche again. And I love how Bruce says, "You want my power? Take it all." And he lets out the most like exerted, forceful cry that we've ever seen from the Hulk. And I love how one of the final shots of that particular segment is a really quick scene of Bruce and David when Bruce was a kid and that father-son relationship. And I love how they do that, and then it cuts to Bruce alone laying in the lake bed by himself. After David had just died.
I think this movie is severely overlooked, especially when you look at the landscape of what Marvel is today. Not every comic book movie you get is Deadpool, Wolverine, or The Batman, or Captain America, the Winter Soldier. They're not all like that, and we know that. But, you know, if this had come out today, or around this time, I think this movie probably would have been seen different, because it takes a little more of a human look at Bruce and the Hulk. And my only hope is that they still have something in the tank for Mark Ruffalo and that version of the Hulk in the MCU. They have strayed so far away with She-Hulk and just the way he's been depicted in other versions. I'm just scared. I don't think that they are ever going to crack anything close to what this movie did 20-some years ago. But before I forget, let's talk about Sam Elliott as General Ross, Thunderbolt Ross. I think this is honestly, I think this is the best depiction of Ross that we've ever gotten. I mean, it's awesome. Man, that rain really picked up. Just don't mind the rain. Let's talk about Sam Elliott, because he's a legend. So Sam Elliott, obviously he played Thunderbolt Ross in 2003 in Hulk, but he also played Carter Slade in Ghost Rider. 4 years later. But this dude's a legend. I mean, I don't have to tell you that. You know, Sam Elliott's been in a bunch of stuff. The dude just doesn't age. Am I the only one that thinks that? I mean, Sam Elliott just does not age. But in this movie, I think he's awesome. He strikes a really good balance between feeling threatening and feeling very, like, military-oriented. But he also, you can tell he's got some form of like a soft spot, especially when it comes to Betty. I thought it was an awesome choice to have General Ross really eventually understand that Bruce is more screwed up than what he originally thought after what David had done to him and his trauma that he hadn't even really dealt with. And that transitions into my favorite segment of the movie. This segment is where Betty actually has Bruce sedated. They take him out in the desert, and this place happens to be the very same place where Bruce and presumably Betty Ross were growing up as young kids whenever David Banner was working under General Ross. And they're in a top secret military base under the ground, and whenever they finally let him out, Betty and Bruce go exploring this area. They go back to around this ice cream shop that there's been flashes of. They go to the swing set, and they eventually end up at the Banner house. Just the way that the landscape looks, the way it's shot. I mean, I've always loved the way that segment looks. And Bruce finally has to deal with these repressed memories inside that house, and especially behind that bedroom door. And you know which door I'm talking about. They've had several shots of this door in nightmares and in different parts of the movie, and he's almost afraid to face what's behind that door. And the way I've always taken it, just based on a shot we got earlier in the movie, you see the door fly open and it's the Hulk standing there in the shadows. And in my mind, that door, behind that door, represents those repressed memories. It represents that child that was there whenever he witnessed a tragedy, and it's always been locked away. And that goes back to the very first transformation that Bruce has into the Hulk. You get to see him struggling, and you get to see that door being pounded down and pounded down more and more until it just gives, and he turns into the Hulk for the first time. But that's one thing I don't think Ang Lee gets enough praise for, is the way that they decide to shoot how Bruce transforms into the Hulk, especially that first time. It's just, again, it's so primal, and it's raw, and you really get to feel like Bruce is really letting something loose, and I love that. I love the way it's framed. I love the way it's lit in the shadows. I love how whenever he finally sees his dad, David Banner, Hulk actually does come up slowly and approaches him out of curiosity, and David reaches out and touches him, and it's that kid. He remembers his dad. He remembers the good stuff. That is until he actually remembers him hurting his mom, and he flares up and he jumps out. But I think it's a real shame that we never got anything more from Ang Lee and Eric Bana as far as the Hulk is concerned. Now, this current landscape, the MCU is starting to bring back a lot of Fox characters like they did with Deadpool, Wolverine. Spider-Man No Way Home brought back all these characters from Tobey and Andrew's Spider-Man universes. Anything's possible. For all we know, Avengers Secret Wars and even Doomsday could have Eric Bana's Hulk in it, along with Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider, Ben Affleck's Daredevil. I mean, spoilers for Deadpool, Wolverine. I never thought Blade would come back, especially Wesley Snipes. That was so cool. And then Jennifer Garner's Elektra and Channing Tatum's Gambit. Obviously, that was really funny. That was a cool inside joke. But we are in such a different landscape now than we ever had been before. Anything's possible. As a 2000s Marvel fan and someone who was there whenever Iron Man came out and watched the entire MCU up to what it is now, I can only hope that if they lean into the multiverse, to wrap the multiverse saga up, if they really want to lean into it and make it worth it, bring back Eric Bana's Hulk, bring back all these legacy characters that we still haven't seen yet. And I think this one would be a great get. I don't know how you would utilize him. I always thought that Eric Bana didn't get a real fair shake at the Hulk as far as a tenure, a career. Again, in the landscape of when this came out and even today, I think it's very unique from everything that came out around it and things that are coming out right now. Oh, and before I go, we need to talk about Danny Elfman's score for this. Because it took me years, and I mean years, until I got into film and started to look at it more closely. It wasn't until a long time where I figured out that Danny Elfman did the score for this movie. Same way he did for Spider-Man and even Batman. The music in this movie, especially the Hulk theme and the other music, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, it sends chills down my spine every time I hear it, especially upon this last rewatch. And then on a side note, The video game that tied in with this movie, it was kind of bad, but I always enjoyed it as a kid too. And I've got it somewhere on my shelf right here with my PS2 game, so I'm going to have to dig it out and I want to play it. But that was me rambling about 2003's Hulk, directed by Ang Lee. But I thought this was going to be fun taking a look as an adult, especially compared to the 4 or 5-year-old kid I was when I used to watch this on rewatch all the time. Looking at it now in the landscape of what the Hulk is in the public eye, we need more of this than we do the She-Hulk, Smart Hulk, and the Smart Hulk that was in Endgame. And I don't know if it's the writing team, I don't know if it's Kevin Feige and the creatives at Marvel, but they feel like they are really out of touch with what makes the Hulk Hulk and what makes Banner tick and what makes this character so fascinating, especially when you go back and watch this movie, you watch the 70s show, even the animated projects understand this. I really hope that Kevin Feige and Marvel get a grip on Mark Ruffalo and the Hulk and give him something to chew on, give him some material, give him something maybe not exactly like this, but give the Hulk something special to do in the MCU. All we can hope is that they will do this, and we'll see what happens. But either way, the way it looks now after Avengers Secret Wars, they may do a soft reboot anyways, and maybe we'll get another Hulk movie, and we will get another version of Bruce Banner. I guess to sum this all up, obviously this is my first video on this channel. My name's Noah. I'm a big film geek, and I'm especially a big comic book movie geek. I mean, I love everything comic book movies and comic book media. I've been making videos ever since I've been a kid. YouTube has always been something I've been interested in, so I figured why not just talk about something that I'm passionate about like I do with everybody else, which is film. This is definitely not going to be the last one. I kind of want to cover Daredevil from 2003, Thomas Jane's Punisher. I'd like to talk a lot more about early 2000s, even other Marvel movies and DC movies, and also other films too. I mean, we could go from The Batman to Shawshank Redemption. You know, that's kind of the scope that I want to be in. Or well, those are both good movies. Let's say X-Men Origins Wolverine to Batman and Robin. You know, I mean, we can go either way about it. This has been fun. Guess I'll see you next time with Daredevil. Oh yeah, before I forget, because I guess I forgot earlier, Jennifer Connelly as Betty Ross. This has got to be probably the best version of Betty Ross we've ever had. The way that she is able to invoke that look onto Bruce and the Hulk and calm him down. I mean, I just always thought she was fascinating. You kind of buy her as being as smart as Bruce and working with him in the lab. I mean, I've always bought this Betty Ross being as smart and being just as smart with Bruce to work with him. But I definitely didn't want to end the video without saying that. She's great. Sorry, I guess I forgot that.